Welcome to the A.P.E.X. event. I am proud and honored to introduce Mandeep today. Mandeep began her journey as a teacher of yoga and meditation in 2000, when she participated in her first yoga class to relieve chronic and painful low back compression. Since then, she has earned 1,000 hours plus of yoga, meditation, and sound healing, certifications, and registered with the International Kundalini Teachers Association, Yoga Alliance, as well as the International Yoga Therapist Association. Her classes and teaching curriculum are uniquely focused on how effectively manage stress and mental disease with meditation, breathing, and mental focus, along with physical components of daily yoga practice. Her philosophy is if you're breathing, have a mind and body, you can meditate and transform everything about yourself to a higher consciousness and self-healing experience. I'm most inspired by Mandeep because after 20 years and 1,000 hours of training, she still considers herself a lifelong learner. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with my great honor to introduce Mandeep.
Satnam. Oh, good. I hear some Satnams.
This is such an exciting day for me. I am a huge fan of yoga and mindfulness training, and just a huge student of that as well. So first of all, I would love to just say thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
It's my honor and true pleasure. And yeah, I wish everyone on the planet was as enthusiastic about yoga and meditation as you are, Lynn.
Well, hopefully we'll make some more converts today, and
well, you never know.
Have some people in the room who are already excited as well.
Let's do it.
Okay, so to get started, I would love to know just a little bit about your background, and just so we can kind of introduce you to our audience today, just kind of, you know, where you were early in life, and just a bit about who you are.
Well, I can't talk about too much about where I was earlier in life because it was pretty crazy. So I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm also a woman, I'm a teacher, I'm a lot of different elements of being a human. So yeah, as Camille indicated, I really started my yoga journey back in 2000 when I was in full-on crisis. I had a very painful back issue, which was undiagnosed, but I was in such pain I could hardly walk. And I was also having a sort of a nervous breakdown from a lifelong of stress, unmanaged stress. So I just really fell apart. And a good friend of mine, who I now recognize as one of my angels, said, let's go to a yoga class. And I was like, you're crazy, I can't even walk. How do I put myself in a pretzel? And she, no, it's not like that. So I trusted her, and I went, and I had a profound experience of, oh my gosh. I mean, I wasn't instantly cured and walked out, you know, don't misunderstand, but I had a profound experience of awakening to my destiny and really knowing that this is my path to recovery. This is my path to well-being, to stability. And so I began. And I'd somewhat been interested always throughout my life in novelty, holistic treatments. As a young mother, I was very interested in raising my sons in a more natural type of way, conscious of what I ate, etc. And yeah, so it just flowed very, very effortlessly. And then here we are 20-some years later, and I'm continuing. It never stops.
Well, that's such a great, sort of introduction into it. I was curious because, sometimes people associate yoga, meditation, they think, oh, well, that's just something you grow up being, centered in this spiritual universe. And I was curious if
there was a real distinct moment that kind of began. And it sounds like it came out of quite a bit of, as you said, pain and stress.
It did.
Were you sort of leading just kind of a very stressful sort of moment to moment kind of life and you just weren't maybe paying attention to what was going on inside? Is that how you would describe it?
Yeah, I was pretty much in survival mode. My parents weren't terrible parents. They were actually great parents, but our household was very dysfunctional. And so that certainly contributed to a stressful environment, growing up in that way. And then, I was married for a while, and that was not a good relationship either. And then I became a single parent. So it was just stress after stress after stress, environmental-wise, that just continued to contribute. And then when I met my husband, who we've been happily married now for 26 years, everything kind of fell apart because I no longer had to hold on to that survival mode. Of really being in this total imbalance of my root and sacral chakras of, okay, survival mode. You got to hold on tight. You got to really push and force through this. When that started to release, that's when I really had this moment of, I got to put myself back together in a different way.
Oh, okay. So then you start living your life in these sort of new ways,
Yes.
and new learnings. And
Yep.
I'd love to get into, and you continue, and it has stayed with you. I'd love to get into the benefits that you found specifically for yourself and share that with everyone. And then we can kind of get into some of the science that you've learned about, to back it up. So at a very basic standpoint, what are the benefits of a yoga, mindfulness training, meditation practice?
Well, all yoga is essentially, all the traditions of yoga are based on several things. And the first component on the physical side is the health of the spine. So how do you keep your spine flexible and healthy? Because the spine is the central point of your nervous system and so forth, and it connects directly to the brain. So there's that element, and that's how I was able to heal my spine, in that I needed to realign it.
Oh, okay.
With postures, etc. And then there's breathing. So the breathing affects the mind in a way that your emotions become much more managed, and you start to have a heightened sense of relaxation and awareness, self-control. So if you just continue to focus on your breathing and be aware of how you're moving your spine and do something on a regular basis in those regards, you do start to have a better impact on how your overall well-being is.
Okay. So the spine aspect of it is kind of the physical, and it's that through line through your whole body.
Right.
And you were able to essentially heal your injury and pain.
Yes.
Through yoga. Was it just learning, new posture from the get-go? I mean, how did that happen?
Well, it was stretching my spine and creating movement that realigned my spine. I also did integrative approach with chiropractic, with acupuncture, with herbs. Well, it was a whole combined effort of integrative approach that really put my spine back into an alignment that was necessary for me to be able to function at a very high quality state.
Okay.
Yoga itself means body, mind, and spirit. It's a trinity practice. So in order for you, it's not just one component of the body, it's everything. It's a full-on spectrum of a technology and a science.
Okay. And then the breath work, before we just get to the science a bit, the breath work aspect of it, it's just fascinating to think that breathing can change your emotional stability and help you deal with your emotions better. Can you go into a little bit more detail? Because I know so many of us now, especially this year, 2020, that
especially this year.
Yeah, the buildup of emotional stress, of emotional burden in various ways. I'm sure many people are looking for ways to transform the way they're confronting their emotions. So sounds like this could be a huge thing. I wonder if you could talk a bit more about how breath work can transform the emotional landscape.
Your breath is an incredible catalyst for change. And if you're breathing, which we're all here because we're all alive and we're all breathing, it's a tool that's readily available. And it is a matter of training your consciousness, your mental focus to be aware of your breath and to breathe in certain patterns. And that's like when we get into the more of the advanced yogic practices, which pretty much anyone and everyone can do. But just to be aware of your breath, just aware of, okay, you've been triggered by something, right? What happens with your breath? Your breath typically comes up high. You're not taking deep breaths. You're in this shallow breathing mode. So your heart starts beating faster. Maybe you sweat a little bit. Your mind starts to become very erratic. Whereas if you go, oh, I'm not breathing here. I'm not fully diaphragmatic breathing. Just pause. It's that pause. Mm-hmm. And then you just take some deep breaths. It's that simple. And you do try to breathe through your nose so that you're breathing in, but you can breathe out through the mouth. That's fine. But it's a way to reset. It resets the nervous system, and particularly it resets your brain. Because we have these systems of the brain, the frontal lobe of the brain, pituitary and pineal glands within the brain, operating within the brain, the left and right, the back of the brain. It's so fascinating how the breath affects all of that radically and very quickly. Mm.
That is amazing. And we have some examples that we're going to do a little bit later, I know. But yeah. I wondered, sometimes for people who might want to just get started, of course, noticing your breath in a moment of stress or a trigger moment, as you said, is a great start. I've read that even starting with a very mindful breath first thing in the morning before you get up, are there any little other sort of tricks or tips that you might help us with for people who want to maybe try something right away?
Sure. This is a lifestyle for me. It's very much a lifestyle for me. And it doesn't mean that I'm living in a nunnery or that I'm off in a cave or deep in a forest. I'm very much active within, a normal householder life. In fact, I have an incredibly busy and rich and full life, particularly with COVID. Our family has come together even stronger in Las Vegas, which is really, really cool. But it can be a bit intense, if you know what I mean. So what happens with me is everyone will have their own unique system and procedures on how you want to adapt and bring this sense of mindfulness practice, and that's the key word, practice. Yeah. You practice, you practice, you practice. And every moment it's a different sense of practice and the experience of your practice. So, you set your environment. How do you sleep at night? What's your environment in your bedroom? What music are you listening to? What are you eating? Are you putting non-GMO foods in your body? Are you consuming a lot of maybe alcohol or smoking or anything like that? Just consider all of those elements and perhaps make subtle shifts in them. And that's typically how I advise people to get started, is just be conscious of what you're eating, what your environment is, how you're monitoring and creating your environment, and then apply your breath practice awareness to that. So yeah, you mentioned when you wake up in the morning. Sure, I wake up and I take some deep breaths and I do some stretches in the bed. It's that simple. Very, very simple. And I also listen to a lot of mantra. Mantra is like a key element of my yogic practice because of sound. So we'll get into that a little bit more. But I sleep to mantras playing very softly in my bedroom. And I also have mantras playing throughout my house, and like in the kitchen, because I'm primarily the main cook. So I have mantras there. And then I have mantras in my office, which my office is in our home. So it drives my husband a little cuckoo because I have different mantras playing in different parts of the house. And he's like, why do you need all those different sounds? I'm like, it's okay. It's all good. I'll turn them down a little bit. So.
Oh, well, I'm just going to ask you about that now. If anybody wants to kind of get into playing those things in their house in different spaces.
Spotify's amazing.
Okay, so they can go to Spotify and just like search mantra?
Yeah, if you put Kundalini mantras in,
okay.
Kundalini, Kundalini mantras, those are amazing. Mantras.
And you can find different ones for sleep, different ones for activity. Let's
and YouTube also has amazing, whole stream of video now that's created with mantra in the background.
And so you may have different ones playing in your house at the same time at different...
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I never thought of that.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, how many facets of your mind do you have?
Right. Lots.
A lot. At least 21 that I'm aware of.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, let's get back into the science a little bit, because I know we wanted to sort of explore that.
Sure.
Now, mindfulness, yoga, all these things, used to be very fringe, right? Very like, woohoo, only the like weird people do that. But now, in the last 10 years, we've seen a huge transformation.
Yeah.
And this has all become, incredibly grounded in science and technology and a really universally acknowledged aspect of health.
Sure.
Could you talk about your research or what you found and some of the things you know about that aspect?
Yes, because I'm very interested in the therapeutic elements of yoga, and I've worked very specifically in addiction recovery in regards to all of that, and stress management too, as we spoke about earlier. I'm very intrigued by the integrative approach that we can take with using the allopathic medicine, which is the Western traditional medicine, and the holistic approach of yoga, herbs, acupuncture, chiropractic, so forth, how it all can blend together. So thankfully, our societal norm is starting to shift and open up awareness to that, and it's all not, it's shifted from being this woo-woo weirdo stuff, which I still love. I mean, I consider myself to be very weird and eclectic and all that fun stuff. In fact, yeah. So, Harvard University, Mayo Clinic, Scripps, all those big names and colleges, universities are all starting to recognize and research, actually put active research into place to where they have, statistics are very important in allopathic and science. So they're starting to put research behind these theories and coming up with astonishing results in Alzheimer prevention and just general overall stress management therapies and being able to work if you have a very stressful chronic disease with pain, etc. How do you manage your stress with that and basically prolong your life and enhance your life's quality, your quality of life? So it's extraordinary to be alive and participating within all of this. I feel like I'm on the front line, shifting into this new era. And now, of course, this year, we've really been thrown into it. There's no more shift. It's like, you got to go. Yeah. We have to change. And there's a lot of resistance to that because there's so much uncertainty and unknown.
That's amazing. I've been seeing it pop up in curriculums, that you'll see mindfulness classes that are incorporated even in traditional universities and things. I wonder if you know of any places to look. We may have some faculty members in the room who might want to put a little bit into their courses somehow. Is there anywhere that you might recommend or any great websites or any great resources for people to maybe look at?
Well, yes. I will be having a channel at some point for sure in my studio when we open, hopefully towards the end of this year in Las Vegas. So there's that resource.
Great.
There's also, I'm just trying to think, gosh, there's so much out there. I mean, Sounds True. They're a very well-known company. Sounds True.
Sounds True.
Yeah, they're amazing. And then anything to do with Omega Institute.
Okay.
They also are very, very good at that, giving lectures and seminars and information. But honestly, if you just Google Harvard or any of these other places, mindfulness, you'd probably be pretty surprised at what is readily available as far as within a university capacity.
Great.
Yeah?
That's incredibly helpful. Thank you so
good.
much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, so let's shift because we got into the science, we got into the technology.
Yeah.
But we would be remiss to go back to, for what we're jokingly calling the woo-woo aspect of it. But to be serious about that, there is a very deep spiritual, almost otherworldly quality to these practices, and I'd love to talk about that aspect of it a little bit, and what it means to you, and just to share a bit about that side of it.
It really is my favorite. If I have a favorite, that's where I get very misty-eyed and just very in a sense of devotion with all of this, because it truly brings you home to your inner divinity and your inner sense of authenticity of you. We have all this, facade that we have been programmed on the outside. You have to look a certain way, you have to act a certain way, you have to be a certain way. And really, the spiritual element is so simple and yet so profound and complex that we can just be authentically ourselves. And so there's a soul energy. This is the yogic philosophy and the spiritual element. There's a soul energy, and the soul is a very specific energy unique to each human. And this soul energy is infinite. It never dies. It never goes away. Now, if we have a dogmatic approach to connecting to your soul or your spirit, that's great. The yoga element of spirituality is a universal tradition. So all religious faiths, we say, are welcome on the yoga mat, welcome on your meditation cushion, always. In fact, prayer is another very profound element of a spiritual practice, a devotional, a bhakti practice within the spiritual element of yoga. And we view this as universal consciousness, being able to connect with universal consciousness through your soul, in intrinsic vibration, who you essentially are. Just be you. This is where the Satnam comes in. And within that realm of awareness and consciousness, we then can connect to the unified field. So this unified field is now becoming not a buzzword, but it's becoming more clear that this is what Einstein had been actively researching to discover and be able to actually put it into formula form. But it does exist, this unified field. And science is rapidly catching up to acknowledging this unified field does exist. And the practice of yoga is a direct way to connect with the unified field. So the unified field is essentially your inner space connecting to the outer space. Does that make sense?
It does. I'd like to go a little further with that because
that's a big, like, wait, what?
Yeah, and I would like to ask a little more about that because actually I'm not as familiar with the concept of the unified field.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that's being connected internally,
yes,
and understanding that
it's always there.
It's always there,
mm-hmm,
and then being able to unleash that to the field, if you will.
It's a combination of exchange.
Oh,
it's a push-pull. It's like the torus.
Okay.
It's like the torus field, which is constantly flowing, going down and up and down, so it allows and up, like a big donut all around you.
Okay, so it allows you to kind of take in everything,
yes,
process everything internally, but perhaps in a more healthy way.
Correct, not reactionary.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot. That
not
makes
reactionary,
a lot of sense.
Right?
So
you're stable. You're like at a 0 point within all of that.
So the mindfulness practice, allows you to access that, to be able to take in the world in a non-reactionary way, which
Yes.
therefore allows you to deal with stress in a
Yes.
more peaceful way.
Correct.
Okay.
You transmute it.
Okay.
Because stress is an energy.
Right.
And if anyone in this room or anyone who's perhaps participating virtually knows how to completely avoid stress, please let me know. Because there is no way that I'm aware of, and I mean, 64 years on the planet, I've had a lot of experience with it. It just is.
Yeah.
Stress is always going to be there.
Right.
This is the human condition, but if we have tools and ability and technology rather, to transmute the energy of stress.
Right.
Because everything is energy.
Right.
Everything is energy. And this is, again, we're energy. All around us is energy. Again, this is this yogic philosophy of these three Trinity elements coming together within this energetic, unified field.
And then one other thing about that I wanted to ask you, well, several things, but one thing is that when you talk about that authentic, it allowing you to sort of live your authentic truth or be your authentic
that's your
self,
destiny. Mm-hmm.
It gives you strength, if you will, to be
Yes.
more centered. Is that kind of how you would interpret it?
That's a great interpretation.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great, because I think that, you're not saying that, we're going to make our lives devoid of stress.
No.
And you're not saying that we're going to force ourselves to be some kind of yogi in the world. You're just going to be you. Mm-hmm. And by
That's
being you, by exploring you in this practice, then you are therefore able to take whatever the winds blow at you.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a coping mechanism so that you're not just coping, you're thriving.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then you had mentioned talking about dogma and religion, and
Yeah.
I know that's such a huge topic,
Yeah.
and it's something that we all encounter on a day-to-day basis, and I'm sure we have people of many faiths in the room. And so this is not necessarily has to be independent of that. All faiths are welcome, and it's not something that needs to necessarily go against any other belief system that you have. Is that, can you maybe expand on that a little more? You're particularly knowledgeable about our audience and our community, here, and so maybe any thoughts about that you can.
Well, yeah, because when you begin to have a stronger sense of your own personal devotion to yourself, I love me, right? I love all y'all, but I love me the most. And that's part of my understanding. It's not being selfish or self-centered or narcissistic. It's about really honoring my sense of self.
Okay.
So within my sense of self, if I were to be a devoted practitioner to an organized religion, then I would honor that in a sense of more devotion to God and however I'm viewing that God. And in yoga, we view it as generating, organizing, destroying / delivering primal force, G-O-D. So if you have a dogmatic approach to that, that's fantastic. Because when you practice yoga, and in particular with me, it was the Kundalini Yoga, I would have the opportunity to develop a stronger sense of really enriching my prayer practice, enriching my compassion, enriching my sense of how can I be of more service. In all of those really beautiful things that very often in a religious organization is encouraged. And it also lends us to feel that we are more connected. So that also is a really important element of being human, is that you don't feel alone. You feel connected, however that looks. And it's beautiful, the diversity that we have. But like when I'm looking at you, when I'm looking in your eyes, Lynn, I see me in you. It's a soul-to-soul connection. So, there's differences, but yet there's very strong similarities within this soul-to-soul connection.
Yeah?
Thank
you. That's really, I think, helpful and hopefully really helpful to other people who maybe are wondering, how these things can coexist.
Sure.
So.
It's a way to release fear and really broadcast love.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, now you mentioned Kundalini, and that is the particular genre, if you will, that you are really devoted to right now.
Love it.
And I'd love for you to talk about that. And before you get into that, just a moment about the greeting Sat Nam, because some people here, obviously, we heard it back to us. Some people know it, and but maybe others don't. Could you share with us what that greeting means, and then go into your Kundalini practice?
Okay, sure. So Sat is a derivative of Satya, and Satya is part of the yamas and the niyamas, which is the Eightfold Path in the philosophy of yoga from Patanjali. And so Sat means truth. Satya is truthfulness, practicing truthfulness. And it's about being true to yourself. It's totally about being true to yourself. So Sat is truth. So I'm connecting to my soul with Sat. And then Nam is devotion. Nam is like bowing, or I'm devoted to my sense of soul, reaching out in a devoted sense or manner to your soul. So it's an opportunity for soul-to-soul connection. In other traditions of yoga, there's Namaste.
Right.
Which maybe that's a little bit more familiar. And Nama is, again, I'm bowing. And Namaste is the whole sense of my light in my light is honoring your light. And so I bow to that. Namaste.
I see.
Sat Nam, very similar.
I see.
A little bit different frequency, but very similar.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let's get into Kundalini.
Yeah,
what is Kundalini? I mean,
What
people
the heck
hear,
is Kundalini?
you know, Kundalini, Hatha, Ashtanga, all these different things. It can be a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
So maybe an introduction to Kundalini, why it's the choice for you, and what does it mean? What is it?
Yeah, well, so all yoga, there's 26 schools or sects or branches, so to speak, of yoga. And they all started really coming into formation around the 1920s, 1900s, 1920s, with gurus, rishis, people becoming awakened in India, and then coming over here to the West and into Europe. It started to like open up the field of awareness on planet Earth and humanity. So within these 26 schools, they're all designed to raise this energy, which is known as Kundalini. The Kundalini energy is depicted as a serpent or as a coil, a 3.5 cycle spiral that starts at the base of the spine, coils around 3.5 times, and then exits half cycle through the top of the head. When that happens, and you have to do something very specific to wake it up. So typically in most branches of yoga, or even in prayer, it can come up. Your chakra energy, the whirling flower vortexes within the spinal energetic column, and sits in front of the spine, the Shushmana, they start to wake up and vibrate in a way that's very heightened. It's very unique. Spin frequency. And they all collaborate together, these 7 vortexes within you, the chakras. So the Kundalini wakes them up in a way that is very like, ooh, something is happening. So you're having an immediate self-exalted experience. And the practice of Kundalini Yoga was really brought together by a gentleman named Yogi Bhajan, who's a very controversial figure at this point. He passed away in 2004, but he brought this technology of Kundalini Yoga, which is a collection of all the 26 schools. So it's considered to be the mother yoga, and it's considered to be the Raj Yoga, the yoga of kings and queens, the royal yoga. But he brought it and taught it to the West, which was very provocative and very unusual. And this was in 1969. So this is the tradition that I was introduced to back in 2006. So I had been primarily practicing Hatha Yoga prior to that, really just getting my body back in sync and focusing on the healing elements of putting my body and my mind back together in a sense, and reconnecting with my spirit. But there was a missing component in my yoga practice with meditation. I'm a very active person, and my mind is crazy. I have a crazy mind. Anybody else have a crazy mind?
Yes.
Okay.
I think we all.
Let's just be honest. Most people do. It's known as the monkey mind. Your mind's designed to be thinking and clicking off thoughts like 1,000 per wink of an eye. It's a master computer, the brain. So I had this incredible experience with Kundalini at a workshop in 2006 down at Red Mountain Spa with teachers that came up from LA. And it was like, wow. Again, it was another huge aha moment, and I recognized immediately that this was the missing component in my Trinity yoga practice of mindfulness. And being able to meditate and create a moving meditation and create more awareness of my mental capacity being in mastery. Because that's the bottom line, is if you can master your mind, Lord help, or the breath, you can master anything.
Right.
You can master anything.
Okay.
So it's big.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. And so Kundalini practice is my choice of practice at this point. And it was predicted to be the primary yoga for this very big transitional age that obviously we're all in. Because he predicted the pandemic, he predicted lots and lots of things.
Really?
There was lots of predictions from this gentleman. Yes, he was a master yogi, and again, a very controversial figure. Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
So in a sort of a day-to-day practice, what does Kundalini entail that maybe is different? Are there certain elements, as you said, and can you share a bit about this, a bit more specifically about it?
Yeah, so there's very unique breath practices with Kundalini, very powerful breath. It's the science of angles and triangles. So we do a lot of very unique movements, a lot of like repetitive movements, like something like this, something like this. And we do things standing, mostly sitting. So we're actively stimulating our glandular system. So there's movement, typically diagonal style movement, powerful breathing practice. There's mantra, lots and lots of sound. And let's see, what am I forgetting? And mindfulness. So let's see, movement, breathing, mantra, and just an overall sense of mindfulness combined with those three elements.
The diagonal movements, is there a particular reason for that, or does it bring the energy to you in a different way, or?
Yeah, when we look at angles and we look at triangles and we look at a square, for example. So energetically, when you have a block, it's a square. If you apply a science of an angular science, it cuts through the square and makes two triangles. So you've created something entirely different. So now we're talking about working with the neural pathways of the brain, because we have these superhighways in our brain. And this is where our behavior patterns come into being. Yeah? So we have these superhighways that are programmed for various reasons. Maybe they're familial, generational programmed. Maybe they're instilled from a traumatic event. There's lots of reasons and ways how these programs are installed. So we have to use something pretty profound to redirect this pattern of behavior, and mantra and breath are key. Okay. They really are components that work very, very quickly and profoundly in ways of, I don't really know of anything else that works as quickly and as profoundly. You can do like a meditation practice, which would include a mantra and breath and maybe a mudra or an arm position for, let's say, 11 minutes for 40 days. And you're starting to totally rewire your brain. Just 40 days for 11 minutes. If you do something for 90 days for 11 minutes, you're really starting to instill that new habit or that new sense of behavior. Let's just use quitting smoking as an example. Then if you did 120 days, you're really starting to create, I am this new practice. I am this new sense of behavior. Yeah?
Yeah.
And then if you do it for 1,000 days, which is a really long time, but well worth it, then you've mastered it.
I see.
And there's thousands and thousands of meditations that you can choose from.
Right. And sound is a part of it as well. Which
it's huge.
That's where the mantras come in.
Yes, it's huge.
Well, okay, what we also want to do is talk about, how we can begin some commitments to well-being. And
Sure.
We had talked about, maybe some people want to know, like, how can we try this? What can we, maybe is there a sort of a really simple mindfulness practice that people might be able to explore? And I was wondering if we could maybe try a little bit of something, maybe just for like 2 minutes, something like that.
Yeah. So I have quite an extensive library, long time collecting, about 14 or so years from now, from then till now. And so what I do is when I get ready to do a presentation or a class for that matter, is I just go to my library and I stand quietly for a few moments and just say, okay, what am I supposed to teach? Or what is it that you would like for me to teach? I mean, this is the spirituality element of it and the devotion. Because it's not just me, it's a much higher sense of purpose that's happening here. And I hope that you all have that experience too and know that. So I went to my library and stood there, and the book didn't fall off the shelf, but I dug through, because I got a lot, I dug through and pulled this crisis kit out of my library, and I'm like, oh, great. So as you can see, I use it a lot. So I opened it up, and lo and behold, it just opened right up to this one, which is super simple, and it's meditation for absolutely powerful energy. And it has all the elements that I wanted to have you all experience, which is mudra, posture. We can just sit, but we want to sit in a certain way to where we feel our spine is really open, particularly the back of the neck. And it has, so mantra, mudra, and eyes are closed at the third eye point. And we're just going to chant this sound of Ong 5 times.
And we should just say that this is just a very simple, it's not connected to a deep,
No.
It's just a 2-minute little introduction.
We're going to chant Ong 5 times.
Yeah. And so it's O-N-G.
O-N-G.
Not O-M, which we hear quite a bit. What's
O-N-G.
What is that sound about?
Yeah, okay, so Ong, and when we say the Ong, yeah, we want to make sure to feel our tongue, how the tongue is connecting to the roof of the mouth. So on the roof of the mouth, I'll get into a little bit of that and explain the whole thing, hopefully. The roof of the mouth contains 84 energy points known as meridian points. And
really?
You being a percussionist, you totally get this. If you're tapping on with your tongue as the mallet or the stick, you use your tongue to tap those points based on how the encoded sounds are creating you to move your tongue, because it's very specific. Om Namo Gurudev Namo, Ad Sach, Jugad Sach, Hebi Sach, Nanakosabi Sach. This is a whole new language that came from India, and it's been around for a very, very long time. But it comes from the mouths of the gurus. So in the mouths of the gurus, it's known as Gurmukhi. So it's when they're in an exalted state of consciousness and receiving these downloads, this language appears. So Ong is basically the sound that the universe creates. It's a frequency sound, O-N-G. So when we create this sound, we're vibrating very specifically this part of the head, which is known as the conch of the head. So you've obviously got spaces here. You've got your eyeballs, you've got sinuses, you've got the frontal lobe of the brain, and then you've got the roof of the mouth and all the bone structure here. So it's very much like a sound chamber. So when we chant the Ong, and we really concentrate on pressing the tip of the tongue to the roof of the mouth, and I like to call that the North Star point. That is just right in the very tippy top of the mouth. You'll feel it. There's like a perfect little groove that your tongue fits into. That's the point I want you to explore on the Ong, like that. So your pituitary and pineal glands, or pineal glands, are directly connected with each other, with the pineal being the master gland of the glandular system. So when you create this simple 3-letter sound, it vibrates pituitary and pineal very specifically and uniquely. So it activates the Kundalini, and it wakes up your glandular system, and you start to have an experience.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah. And it probably clears your sinuses and things too.
You might cough, which is good, because this is the time of year. I'm sorry if I'm futzing with my microphone, excuse me. this is the time of year where we have allergies here in
Yeah.
Cedar, right? We have cottonwood trees, we have ragweed, we have a rabbit brush, we have lots of fun things. So you may cough, and you definitely might sneeze or feel a sense of tickly, vibrational, buzzy, and that's good. So you may want to have some Kleenexes by you or whatever, because it might get things stimulated to where you'll have a release, which will be awesome.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's try it. And,
cool.
I mean, if you don't want to try it, that's fine. You can sit quietly.
yeah.
But if you want to try it, let's try it. So what do we do?
Okay, so I want you, first of all, to sit up in your chairs, please, and put your feet flat on the floor.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. So you can practice any yoga in a chair for the most part. Ashtanga yoga would be a little hard to practice in a chair, but it's, you know, in some shape, it's totally doable. So when you sit in the chair and your feet are flat on the floor, let's just connect first with the way that our spine is. So we're going to just sort of roll our head around a little bit, roll the shoulders a little bit. Just get to where you feel comfortable, because this is a pretty heavy object that sits on top of a little spindly part of your spine, the cervical spine. So as we sit here and we just feel relaxed, because that's the key component to anything, just relax, is you want to roll your shoulders up and back so your chest is lifted when you do that. Then you want to feel that your chin drops just ever so slightly. So you feel the back of your neck open. This is important because we want the brain stem to have a flush of energy and circulation. Now, our hands are going to be placed into a mudra, and the mudras are super cool. So we're going to interlace our fingers, but we're going to push our ring fingers against each other. And this is kind of, it feels a little awkward. The other fingers want to play. We want to play too, but no, we just want to make our our ring finger, which this is the planetary energy of the sun in the ring finger. This is your vitality finger, okay? So all the other fingers are interlaced, including your pinkies, which definitely want to be frisky and jump up. Those are your Mercury fingers, the little mischievous Mercury. So we want to, as best as we can, yeah? And then we're going to hold this mudra in front of the solar plexus. Now notice when you do that, there's an angle. Your fingers are not pointing straight ahead. No, they're pointing up at a 60-degree angle. Yeah? So there's a diagonal cutting through happening. And then what we'll do is we'll just take a deep breath. Let's exhale out the mouth. And again. Now just sit quietly for a minute and close your eyes down and let them roll slightly upward. And when we chant the Ong, you want to open your mouth and just let the sound emerge. And it's O-N-G. So as we do the Ong, you're going to then press your tongue to the roof of the mouth and really vibrate this sound. So we're going to let it extend out for a pretty long time, and we're going to repeat it 5 times. So it may end up being like a chamber of sound in the room, like one person might be done, and then they're going to start again, etc., like that. Okay? Let's see how we do. Inhale. Om. Now maintain the mudra and just sit quietly. You're to integrate your experience. Beautiful. Deep inhale. And exhale. And opening your eyes and just gently shake your hands out. Wiggle your fingers a little bit. So, the power of this chant, when it's correctly done, must be experienced to be believed. Only 5 repetitions are necessary to totally elevate the consciousness. When you have a hard day to face, this meditation will give you absolutely powerful energy. Very useful, yeah? And it will balance your most effective computer, the brain. This meditation can also be done when you are able to sleep afterwards. So if you've really got a lot happening in your brain, it's great for what they call brain drain. So it drains all that stress energy out of the brain so you can relax and go to sleep.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
I know, it's magnificent. Y'all did great. Thank you.
What a beautiful, just
that was
beautiful
gorgeous.
sense of the room,
oh my
right?
gosh.
It's really nice that way.
Yeah,
so
I got real tingly.
Yeah, so please feel free to, share with that. And we're almost out of time. This has just flown by. But
oh my goodness.
I know. Okay. I just have maybe 1 or 2 additional questions for you. Sometimes people will say, I want to get going with this, but I can't sit still for that long. It's just too quiet, or I can't do it right. How do I know if I'm doing it right?
Sure.
What advice do you have to those? I'm sure people have asked you those questions as well. What advice do you have for people who say, I can't sit still for any long time? Maybe just a short practice like we did is a great way to start.
Absolutely.
How do people know if they're doing it right?
Well, that is an important facet, and it is important to technically get it down. So there's lots of things online that you can research. There's a lot of very easily accessed information available. However, you do want to get authentic. If you're interested in Kundalini, you have to get authentic Kundalini practices. So we do have teachers here in town. In fact, I'm going to give a shout out to 2 professors that are actually in the room, Angela and Matt Patino, who Angela is a trained Kundalini teacher. So you do have a resource directly on campus that you're able to access. But there are books that are available that are wonderful. The Kundalini Yoga, The Source of Eternal Power, is one I like to recommend for beginners. So, there's a wealth of information. We're the age of internet. So you just don't want to get something that is going to lead you off into a path of, maybe not doing it in a way that is self-serving. Because there is some confusing information that's out there. So you'll have my contact information after this. You're more than welcome to reach out to me and say, hey, I've got this that I'm interested in doing. Feel free to reach out to me. Absolutely.
We will put your website, after the event, we'll build your archive page.
Beautiful.
We'll put your website on there and all of the events that are going to be happening in Las Vegas, or even maybe perhaps closer to here, down the line, people can find out more about.
Absolutely.
We will also be on the radio at 3 p.m. today on KSUU, Thunder 91.1, and we'll be recording that interview where we'll continue the conversation.
Cool.
Last question for you. You started this practice and have maintained it, and I just wondered if there was anything that you wish you had known in the beginning. Because, we maybe have students who are just embarking on it or want to embark on it, and is there any advice that you would give now if you were starting again, or that you think would be great to know for people getting involved in the first steps?
Commitment is key. A consistent practice is very important, but to be relaxed about it. You don't have to be rigid about it. You don't have to force it, but you do need to be committed. So commitment is a way that you build your caliber. Your caliber is a very important part of who you are as far as how you move through, challenges, etc. So yeah, commitment equals excellence. Yeah, commitment equals caliber, which equals excellence.
I love that.
And to be relaxed about it. Yeah, don't be super rigid with yourself.
That's great advice, because I think sometimes people think, oh, well, I have to do this every day at a specific time, and so just
well, that's important.
That's the commitment part.
But if you miss a day, whatever. That's a favorite mantra of mine. Whatever. And this is the mudra. You just pick it up and go again.
And that relaxation, I think we all could use a bit of, especially in these times and these days.
Absolutely.
Well, great. Well, with that, I think we'll close for this time together. But again, the conversation will absolutely continue later today. And Mandeep will be around, mixing and mingling here if you'd like to come up and say hello,
love that,
or had any questions or anything like that. On behalf of A.P.E.X Events, Southern Utah University, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an honor. Thank you.
Truly my pleasure. Thank you.